This is Gigabyte's AORUS 17 XE4, a 17-inch thick-boi gaming laptop with some top-tier specs and performance. I'll be honest and say that I actually quite like it, although there are some things that drive me just absolutely up the wall about it, so let me explain. But first, a message from this video's sponsor, Lexar. Their AORUS RGB RAM is a factory overclocked, stylish RGB kit that comes in both DDR4 and DDR5 options, plus this stunning white too. It offers impressive overclocked performance, with this kit boasting a 4000 megatransfer per second rating, plus sleek aluminium heat spreaders, and of course is topped with RGB lighting, which you can control with Lexar RGB Sync. It's even compatible with major motherboard brands' RGB platforms, so check it out at the link in the description below. I'll start with the specs. This near 3cm thick beast is rocking an i7-12700H, which is a 6P8E core chip, with just 16GB of DDR4 3200 CL22 RAM, a 1TB Gen 4x4 SSD, and an RTX 3070 Ti laptop chip with a peak 130W TDP or power limit, and 8GB of GDDR6 VRAM. Not bad, and with the cooling potential that this has, which I can assure you is a lot, just look at the beefy ass heat pipes inside, you get a pretty healthy performance out of it too. Cinebench R23 single-threaded shows strong performance, a clear tier above the rest of the pack, although somewhat as expected behind, or at least a hair behind, the higher boosting i9-12900H in the Flow Z13. However, when we swap to the multi-threaded performance, thanks to the excellent cooling potential, you get top-tier performance. It is the fastest machine I've tested, and not by a small margin. Interestingly, the turbo mode, which with its much louder fan profile, isn't all that much faster here. The BMW scene in Blender again has the XE4 on top, although the gap to the 12700H in the ZenBook Pro 14 Duo OLED is pretty small. Still a fair margin above everything else though. In Gooseberry, it's a similar story, with the XE4 topping the leaderboard, albeit by not the largest of margins. It's still a healthy improvement though, with well over a minute off of the 12900H's performance from ASUS's new gaming tablet. Using Puget Bench in Premiere Pro again has the XE4 at the top of the charts, even beating out the 10-core M1 Pro in the newest MacBook Pro, which is no mean feat. It's also a clear lead over literally everything else I've had my hands on. After Effects though is much more modest, possibly thanks to only having 16GB of RAM on hand, although it does still beat out both the M1 Pro and the ZenBook Pro 14. Finally, in Photoshop, it's again more midfield, although it's much closer to all of the other scores here, meaning that you can expect a perfectly decent and reasonable experience while using Photoshop. Of course, being a gaming laptop, well, you want to know how this machine handles in games? And in short, the answer is rather well. Starting off with CSGO, the XE4 is the second fastest machine I've tested, only behind the many £1,000 RTX A5000 based ProArt StudioBook, and only by 3 FPS average, so I'm going to call that a win for the old XE4 here. Plus, it has the best 1% load times I've seen as well. As for Cyberpunk, it's worth noting that the XE4 was benchmarked with the new built-in benchmark, which gives slightly different results to the manual benchmarking I've done previously. But with that said, there is no denying just how fast this new combo is, especially with the adequate cooling that you get in this machine. And you get pretty exceptional performance from this hardware and this configuration as well. Fortnite is a similar story, with a very healthy lead over the rest of the pack, both in average and 1% low performance. Running it over 10 FPS faster on average than the next fastest machine I've tested, and 30 FPS up over the next one down is not bad at all. Watch Dogs is equally the same, where again the XE4 is extraordinarily high by comparison, netting over 100 FPS average compared to under 70 FPS average for any other machine that I've tested. And finally for today, Microsoft Flight Simulator, where again we see an incredible leap in performance, jumping from just 52 FPS average to 86 FPS average instead. In fact, even the 1% low figure beats out the next best average result I've seen, which is just absolutely incredible performance. Since this is a gaming machine, Gigabyte have gone all in with the display too, as this is a 17.3-inch 1080p 360Hz IPS panel, and it's one that I really like. It's smooth as all hell, it's snappy and responsive too, and just makes for a pretty excellent gaming experience. Fast-paced games play rather well on this. The combination of enough horsepower and enough hertz just works really well and makes for a great usage experience and playing experience as well. Now, Gigabyte claims that this is a 3 millisecond response time. Sadly, my testing suggests more like 7.5 milliseconds, which still isn't bad at all, but it does mean that frames don't get fully rendered, fully drawn before the next one is ready to be drawn. You can see that in the UFO test, where no frame is quite 100% drawing before a new frame starts. You can see the white markings taking 5 or 6 milliseconds to clear off too. Still, it's a fair bit faster than most any other gaming laptop that I've tested, and to the eye it's still a pretty great experience, so it's not a massive problem, but it is worth noting and it's worth you knowing about. What's also impressive is the color accuracy. While the panel only covers 100% of the more limited sRGB spectrum, it covers it fully, and with an average delta E of just 0.86 in my testing, which is excellent. That means if you want to use this as a part-time creator laptop, especially for, say, cutting together or editing your game clips or whatever else, you should have a pretty good experience with this. And of course, if you plan to just use that for content consumption, you still end up with a fairly vibrant and fairly, well, enjoyable panel. You also get around 350 nits of peak brightness, which isn't exactly enough for outdoor or bright room usage, but is plenty for most places that you would end up using a gaming laptop like this one. What's less of a great experience, at least for me anyway, is the keyboard. I can't quite put my finger on what feels off about it for me. Maybe it's the spacing, which feels a little strange. Maybe it's the slightly mushy keys with just a touch too long of a travel before actuating. Either way, it wasn't quite as nice as I would like. I did mostly get used to it though, so it's clearly more of a personal preference, and you do get both white and RGB backlighting for that, which is nice, along with an automatic profile switching which uses Azure AI in the Gigabyte Control Center app. Yeah, you heard that right. Azure AI, which is the AI boost toggle in here, which supposedly, and I quote, can automatically and dynamically optimize CPU, GPU power for different apps through deep learning on the Microsoft Azure servers. Yeah. Basically, it's just an auto profile switcher sort of feature, so when you launch a game, it will swap to the gaming mode, and when you launch a creative app like, well, an Adobe app like Premiere, it will swap to the creator mode instead, and you can manually pick turbo mode if you fancy having a whiny jet engine right next to you. Or there's also the battery saver or power saver and the meeting mode, which quietens everything down, sets the brightnesses to a little bit lower, which is actually quite nice to have on hand. Also, a note here, Gigabytes, in your reviewer's guide you claim that this software offers a clean panel, user-friendly, information-rich dashboard. I have to disagree. The text here is tiny and incredibly hard to read, and the controls like the battery charging limit, which is an excellent feature, is unintuitive as hell. To set a charging limit, you first have to use the tiny drop-down to select customized down from standard. Why is that customized? Why is that not just enabled? Whatever. And then you get a slider that doesn't tell you anything about its values. No, you need to click and drag it to see a little tooltip, a tiny tooltip, to tell you that this position on the slider means it will limit the battery charging to 75%. Yeah, what? Make all of these settings bigger, get rid of all of this wasted space, and make everything easier to access. Oh, and on the dashboard tab, don't just show the big single figures. Make all of these data points graphs so that you can see what has been happening. If you want to know what your temperature, say for your GPU is while running a game, alt-tabbing and seeing a rapidly declining single value isn't useful, but seeing a graph where you can look at, what temperature it was running at is. So please swap that over. Although actually, speaking of the battery, you get a 99 watt-hour battery here, which is the largest that they can put in, and you can still bring it on a plane. Sadly, thanks to the rather power-hungry hardware, you only get around 3 hours of battery life, at least with relatively high screen brightness. You can lower that down to eke out a little more, but I think, let's face it, you're gonna want to be near a wall plug pretty much whenever you're using this thing. Another thing that you should know about is the I/O. That's a little strange. You get 2 USB-A ports, 1 Thunderbolt 4 USB-C type ports, a mini display port, HDMI, Ethernet, a headphone jack, and DC in. Yeah, I said mini display port there. Personally, I would have rather seen another USB-C port that has DisplayPort Alt mode out. That would kind of be a little bit better, and at least instead of the mini display port. And also, Gigabyte, why did you put the DC jack on the right-hand side? The side where you want as much space as possible to use a mouse with properly? Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Perhaps this was an internal routing issue. Not that you'll know, because Gigabyte decided to put 2 stealth sort of warranty stickers on both of the front screws. The stickers don't expressly say that they'll void your warranty, because I think that's illegal over in the States, but it sure makes it look like they will. It's even more strange though, because internally there is a spare M.2 slot, and the RAM is actually 2 SODIMM slots, which you can, you'll probably want to upgrade since you only get 16 gigabytes, which in a machine of this sort of class isn't exactly top notch. So to have them make it, more difficult, or to make it more clear that you're probably not meant to go in here, is a little strange. As a whole package though, I think it's a very impressive machine. It's quite clearly focused on being a gaming laptop, and in general, I would say that it hits that mark. The 360Hz screen is fantastic. The performance is exceptional, and for £2,000, I'm remarkably actually impressed by that price tag. Of course, that is a crazy amount of money for most people, but for this style of machine and this level of hardware, I'm relatively surprised and impressed. There are some drawbacks for sure, but if you are in the market for a larger sort of powerhouse machine and can stomach that price tag, then maybe give this one a look. With that said, those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the AORUS 17 XE4? Is it a machine that you'd pick up yourself, or would you go with something else instead? Maybe something in a slightly more portable form factor, or something with maybe an AMD CPU instead? Feel free to let me know in those comments down below. I'll do my best to leave a link to this in the description. That'll likely be an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store if you want to check out pricing when and where you watch this, because it can and does vary depending on where you are. You can also check out the rest of the links in the description if you want to support the channel and keep me making these videos. You can also just support through YouTube itself and get some cool rewards like sponsor-free videos and access to our Money Min Discord chat through the YouTube join button, or you can support on Patreon instead if you'd rather. There's also a load of affiliate links to places like Overclocks UK if you're buying from there, and a load of other stuff you can check out, so feel free to take a look down in the description. And you can also hit that subscribe button to stay notified of all of the new videos from me. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. I'll leave some more videos on the end cards and maybe some of the other laptop reviews I've done recently. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you all in the next video.